Beautiful to be with you this morning. I've been in my writer's cave. I'm going back in after today. This manuscript I'm working on is due the first week of January. So pray. That's what I'm doing every day. We have a koi in our backyard, and in the winter the koi hibernate. But in the first part of winter they can't quite decide. So they come out, swim around, then they go back into the cave. Then they peek their little heads out, look around, go back, until finally there's a time when they just decide, okay, it's time, we're going into the cave. And so when you have 4 weeks left to work on your manuscript, you decide it's time. I'm going right back into the cave. So I hope that you are finding much inner strength in your spirit in these days that are short and this growing darkness, right? Of course, it's not only just seasonal and timely. We feel the darkness in our nation and in our world. So as Reverend Sundari said, it's especially right for us to find a way to turn up the light within us and around us. I came across a beautiful quote by Mark Nepo, who said, if we stay luminous in the whirl of existence, who's to say we can't be stars for each other? If we stay luminous in the whirl of existence, who's to say we can't be stars for each other? So this time of the year, well, I'm never very good about clock time anyway, but this time of the year I tell time by what's happening with the trees in the garden and the birds that migrate, that I see them only in the winter, and the squirrels. They are really my harbingers of winter, because at the conclusion of fall, squirrels, who are naturally kind of frenetic, don't you think squirrel is just the right name for them? Although I have trouble seeing them now, because somebody wrote that they're really rats in fur coats. And so I have a different view of them, but besides that, I watch their rhythm, and in the fall, they're really busy, right? And we have a walnut tree down the street at our house, and so they're harvesting the walnuts, and they start out by taking these walnuts, and I can see them taking these walnuts and planting them all throughout our garden. And then as the days get shorter, they seem to get more nervous about winter coming on. And, a squirrel being nervous is an odd thing, but you can just see it. And so they go from planting in the yard to planting in my little pots on the porch. And, I come out in the morning, my pots are all torn up. And then as it gets even closer to winter, I go out and they've just thrown walnuts into the shoes that are parked on the front porch. And then the last thing, when they're just totally bedraggled and they just feel like they can't take it anymore, they just throw walnuts on the doormats. And it really goes like that each year. I can kind of tell, where we are in the cycle of things from the squirrels. So, I watch them start to worry as it gets dark. And I think, what do we do to not become more frantic in this season? So we're just kind of throwing our life together. And what's the best way for us to gather the light, to hold it, to sustain and inspire one another? And I've been looking at the Isha Upanishad. And that Upanishad is said to be like the best of all the Upanishads. And Mahatma Gandhi said, if we lost all the Vedas and had only the first verse of the Isha Upanishad, the teachings would be okay. We would have it. And the first line in that says, the Lord is seated in the hearts of all. There's one reality that is in the hearts of all. So it starts right there. And then it tells us, it gives us a warning, and it says, look, be careful. If you, try to find your happiness and your security in the things of the world and the conditions of the world, you're only going to find darkness and sorrow and confusion and despair. So if you're just focused out there, warning, warning, warning. Don't do that. And, that's nothing new for us to hear from the scriptures, right? It's in all of them. Be careful in the world, you're going to have trouble. Right? Is that familiar? Yeah. So then what the Upanishad does that's interesting is it says, okay, there's a problem if you just put all your attention in the world. You're going to have darkness. But then it says, but wait, it's worse. Wait, it gets worse. If you put all your attention on the inner world, that is worse. That's interesting, isn't it? So what the heck? Because it seems like, we hear that call from all the traditions, be careful, don't put all your expectations, don't put all your attention out there, don't try to find peace out there, for goodness sakes, right? So we think, okay, I'll be spiritual. I'll just bring my attention within. I'll just hang out there. But the Upanishad said, oh, that's going to be worse. What are we supposed to do? It's such a beautiful teaching. It says, if you are just one or the other, you're going to find insufficiency. Because wholeness is both. Wholeness is both. You must have meditation and action. And the two must come together in order to have wholeness, in order to have the fullness of awareness. And I was thinking about, when I was a kid, and maybe you heard this from your parents, but it kind of developed into a little saying, and certainly I heard it, which was, don't just sit there, do something. And then the Buddhist meditation teachers came along and they said, don't just do something, sit there. So, we can get whiplash going back and forth, right? So we need something like, sit there and do something. We need both. But what, I think, for me the question comes, what to do? Certainly we need to be awake. We need to nurture our inner life every day. And do not underestimate the power of your meditation and your prayer. It matters. Of course, it matters to us individually, but it matters certainly to our families. It matters to our community. It matters to our world. But if we're only there, if we're only in our meditation, and we're not considering what we do to act to bring that light into the world, then we only have half the picture. This is what the Isha Upanishad tells us. So I think besides being awake, we also, especially in this time, have to tend to what it is that we can do to be inspired. Because there's plenty that comes at us every day that is not at all inspiring. And so we have to search out, what is it that's going on in our community and in our nation and in our world that makes us inspired to be alive? So we have to search that out, don't you think? So, we've seen some beautiful studies on neuroscience that have told us that, negative experiences are like Velcro. They stick to us. And positive experiences are like Teflon. They just slip right away from us. And the truth is that we have many more positive experiences in any given day than negative ones. But at the end of the day, what do we think about? We think about the one thing that we screwed up on, the one thing that went wrong, the one thing that made us mad, the one thing that felt unresolved, the downer, the Velcro downer. Well, there were all these things that we could look at, that we could hold up to say, this is the sweetness. This inspires me to be alive today. So we have to be up to that in our personal practice, in our own lives. When we go to bed at night, we watch what the mind does. And so we want to pay special attention to the Teflon positive things that went on every day, because that builds a positive mind. They're discovering that it changes the brain. This is what Paramahansa Yogananda told us. In the 1920s, he was saying that. Now science is affirming it, so we're grateful. But I want to say that I think besides in our personal lives, we need to expand this experiment that we're doing, this practice that we're doing with Velcro and Teflon. We need to do that with the community and with the world, because we have so much Velcro coming at us, right? That's the strength of the voice, of how much trouble there is, how much unrest there is. How much news do you see about what people are doing that's really working? Are you seeing it? Not much of it. So we have to look for it. And then, just like we do in our personal life, what they're teaching about this positive influence on the mind and the brain is that you have to cultivate it. Like anything else, you have to cultivate it. You have to think about it. And you have to, above all, you have to feel it. Because we feel all that Velcro that's negative that comes at us every day. We're feeling it. I was laying in bed the other night, and I realized that I was laying in bed holding myself up. That was a weird thing to be doing. I mean, some of it was the book deadline, but the rest of it was the world. So it's made me really think about how we need to pull out, because there's more of it than there is of the negative, but it's outside our view, so we have to find it. So I want to tell you just about a couple of things that have been on my mind that let me just relax in the bed and not hold myself up. So I was reading about some people in Seattle who were looking at what to do about homelessness in their community. And the challenge that many of us face when you're going down the street and you see people living on the street and you just you don't know what to do. And the thought comes up why isn't our government doing something about this? And these two architects in Seattle, a man and his daughter, started working with this, and they came up with the insight that it's not a government problem, it's really a community problem. And what has happened is that people have been pushed outside of community. So they're on the fringes of community. So because they're architects, I guess, they came up with the inspiration of building these tiny houses for people without homes. But here's the thing. Their plan was they call the block something. What do they call it? I forget what they call it. The block something. Anyway, the idea is for people in neighborhoods to donate space in their backyard for a tiny house. And so the article that I read was about the first one being built in Seattle, and the couple who, they gave up their vegetable garden in their backyard, and here's this little tiny house going in, and the first man to occupy it was a 75-year-old Native American who'd worked all of his life. He'd been homeless for 10 years, and he was going to have a home. And I was so inspired by somebody who would give space in their own backyard. And in the conversation with these people, they said, we're the ones getting the blessing. This is something we can do. And they did some research, and they found out that if they were able to just have one of these tiny houses in each backyard in every block in Seattle, the problem of homelessness would be done. Everybody would have a place to live. And they now have 30 people who have signed up, and there's no financial gain for them. But 30 people have signed up to have a little house in their backyard to make a space for someone to live. Now, I'm just saying, we need to know about things like this, right? And we need to talk about it with each other. I'm not saying that this is the solution. I'm just saying we need to be aware that these kinds of things are going on, and that needs to be our conversation. Not the most recent tweet. We need to elevate the conversation. We need to talk about the Nobel Peace Prize, going to the people who are saying, let's have a vision of a world that is free from the nukes. ICANN, International Committee for the Abolition of Nuclear Weapons. They won the Nobel Peace Prize. How much press did it get? This is the conversation that we want to have, because we want to help keep our hearts open and grow stronger. Velcro our courage, Velcro our strength. So I just want you to join me in thinking about how we can have more awareness, meditation and action, those two in our lives. To not feel powerless, to not feel hopeless, and to not be filled with fear. We have to bring those two together. It's not enough for us to just retreat into our meditation cave and say we're sending forth the light. We have to look at what is the positive action that's going on in the community and in the world, because it will move us to do whatever is for us to do. Do you see what I mean? I'm going to conclude with a little poem by Mark Nepo. It's called The Thing About Fear. The thing about fear, we try to avoid it, distract ourselves, even put others in the way. It's his fault, her fault. We try to avoid it, distract ourselves, even put others in the way, because it makes what is necessary seem monumental. It's fear that does that. It makes what is necessary seem monumental. It makes what is needed seem uncrossable. Yet, when we stumble over the line or are loved over the line, when we stumble over the line or we are loved over the line, in our exhaustion, fall, behind our pain, beyond our pain. What we feared was a fall to our death turns out to have been the next step. So let us, in this winter season, have a good diet of meditation, inspiration, and right action. Om Shanti.